Send in the red shirts.
Episode 3 of Discovery, just this past Sunday night. Context is for kings. Let me just start off by saying that if you are a Trek fan and you had issues with the first 2 episodes, I suspect that this episode will alienate you even more. I've been checking on Facebook and Twitter, and some of the people that I know that weren't happy with Discovery last week are saying that it's just bad as of watching this last episode. And I disagree with them completely. I wouldn't say it's bad. It is not the Trek that we know. It's definitely a darker tone, has a darker tone. The music is nothing like what we're used to in previous series, like TNG, which was scored by Rob Jones, first 2 seasons. He got fired. Then they brought on Dennis McCarthy, and he kind of set the tone for all of the other series after that. His music was much more, not much melody, more like what they say in the industry, like bed music. Had no discernible ups or downs, highs or lows. It was just more atmospheric, which was fine for those shows. This Trek clearly wants to be something different. If you're going to try to do something different with Star Trek, because let's face it, Star Trek had gotten a little stale. I mean, those reboot movies, let's just say the first mistake they made with those reboots was to try to convince us that these actors could play Kirk, Spock, Bones, and others. But if you're going to try to do something different with Star Trek to make it fresh again, I can't blame the producers for what they're doing. Having said that, it does not feel like Trek, besides the fact that we see the insignia. We hear some of the technobabble is starting to come out now. You know, there are some familiar Star Trek tropes, but this is far darker than what I'm used to with Star Trek. You know, everything's going dark now. Superman is dark. Justice League is dark. Everything's dark. All our heroes are dark now. Well, for some reason, it doesn't bother me that much with Trek because it's still clear what the aspirations and goals are in this Trek series. Burnham puts it best when she gives her speech to Lorca. We're going to get to him soon. But she puts it best in her speech to Lorca. She's still hopeful. She still has that champion spirit, even though she committed a mutiny. You can look at my previous review of the last 2 episodes to see why, even though she is a mutineer, it made sense to me. It was a way to go that was legitimate to me. I was expecting that once we got onto the Discovery, things would be a little bit more what I'm used to, like when you walk into the bridge of the Enterprise in TNG or Ops in DS9, but it was not. First of all, I think the issue is that we're seeing everything through the lens of Michael Burnham, so the audience is meant to identify with her. And she is now currently not very well liked by the crew of the Discovery. So we feel that ostracization, if that's the word, or we feel her isolation. That plays a big part in why the show feels a little off kilter, a little dark. We see things in the bowels of this ship that I don't think we've ever seen before in a Star Trek series, in terms of viewing it through the lens of the main protagonist. We see snarkiness in the security officer towards Michael. We see, this guy is such a jerk, Lieutenant Stamets. We see him just be a complete ass to Michael. Okay, she's a mutineer, I understand it, but he's still kind of a jerk. The way he talks to Lorca, I did not like that character. I didn't like the character, but I think I'm supposed to not like the character at this point, because he goes into this monologue about why he disliked Michael and her actions. Well, you know, she fomented a mutiny, so it's clear that people aren't going to really trust her. And that is normal. That's natural. That's why I think this episode took me a little bit off the track in terms of Trek, but I'm still on board. Typically, when we meet a new alien species, whether it's bacterial, microbial, or bipedal, or humanoid, in my opinion, most of the times those first contacts are generally benign, unless you have an entity, a malevolent entity. It's malevolent because maybe the crew or the cast of whatever series we're talking about, they didn't know that the entity wasn't acting out of evil or malevolence. It was just being natural and or being threatened. That's usually how it tends to go when we deal with aliens that present a threat to the crew. This is my opinion. In the first scene in this episode, we are introduced to a species DS5 something 68, I don't know. But they're basically microbes that eat electricity, and they glom onto the shuttlecraft, which is transporting Michael and 2 or 3 other prisoners to a penal colony, I suppose. And we don't get any introduction to this species other than, oh, that species DS35 whatever. They eat electricity, and if we don't get out of these shackles, we're going to freeze to death and we'll be drifting in space. And then we see them fight for their lives, and we also see, minor spoiler, a shuttle pilot who goes out to try to wipe those things off of the hull of the transport. And her line gets snapped or broken, and she just starts floating out into space. She's dead. And she wasn't even wearing a red shirt, for God's sake. Yeah, that was pretty hardcore. I mean, just seeing prisoners in Star Trek that are kind of like really gritty. This is a new paradigm for Trek, and I'm not completely upset with it. But that first scene set the tone. It reminded me of Empire Strikes Back, one of my favorite movies of all time, where they're in the space slug's mouth. They don't know it's a space slug at the time, and Leia is sitting there in the cockpit of the Falcon, and this Mynock just attaches to the window. Now, these aliens, these spores didn't look as threatening as that, but it was the same kind of like scary or I don't know how to describe it, but it was pretty intense. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm going to keep coming back to that. It was really rough, like I said, going to Discovery, the crew being really cold to Michael. It felt a little off kilter, but I was okay with it. Like I said before, we're seeing areas of the ship, we're seeing dynamics on this show that we haven't really been privy to in Trek before. We saw the security officer, how she talks to Michael and treats her like crap, which I think is far more natural, that if you dealing with someone who created a mutiny. I think on the old Trek series, which I love, I don't think you would have seen it portrayed as realistically as you saw here. And the producer said there's going to be conflict between these two characters. We saw it with Stamets and Lorca. We saw it with, I don't remember the security officer's name. I think she's a Hispanic female actress. We saw it with her and Michael. We see it with Saru and Michael. Saru played it cold with Michael. I think I will treat my captain much better than you treated yours. This is uncharted territory for a Trek fan. But that works because this is a prequel. Unfortunately, it is a prequel. They're in uncharted territory themselves. It's not as expansive as the newer series or the series that we're used to. Those series, they had charted most of at least half of the galaxy. This is still the nascent Federation still charting the Alpha Quadrant. So the rules are a little different. It's a little bit more like kind of like a wild, I keep saying uncharted realm that they're in. And so they may not be as formal as what we're used to in the Berman versions of Star Trek. I'm fine with that. So the plot moves on. I'm not going to give any spoilers, but basically Burnham meets Lorca, and Lorca is really creepy. Lorca has some Negan from Walking Dead. He's got some of that stuff going on. And from the minute he came on screen, I just felt like, okay, there's something not right about this guy, which is not what I expected at all. So there's a lot more of a mystery element to this series, which may be off-putting to some. Hey, I don't know what to tell you. There's a reveal at the end which makes it clear that Lorca is not the captain that we're used to, the type of captain you're used to. Now, this is a mild spoiler, but one of our fans, one of the Red Shirts listeners, Stephen Bates, brought up that this captain reminded him of the captain in a Voyager episode called Equinox. Now, I'm not going to say anything more than that. You can go check out that episode on Voyager. I understand Voyager is the most watched of the Star Trek series on Netflix anyway, so go check it out. But yeah, Lorca is shady. Let's just put it that way. I don't trust him. I don't like him. And if you watch this, it's clear why I don't. The middle part of the episode has Michael arriving on Discovery, and wow, I got a chance to see Sus Mana, Vulcan martial arts, which I guess was introduced in Enterprise, the last Star Trek TV series that was on. I didn't watch that series, so this came as a shock to me. But Michael Burnham was a badass with it. There's a setup where Michael, we go through all the standard where she has to get used to the crew. She's shunned. She meets a very annoying cadet. Don't remember the cadet's name. I have to say that's one problem when you don't really remember all the names of the crew people that you're meeting. So we're going through all of that, trying to get to know her. And it's rough because, like I said, no one likes her. Stamets definitely doesn't like her, and he lets her know that. She and other crew members are assigned to an away mission where they have to salvage some data from another Federation ship that's adrift in space. And when they get on that ship, man, it's like it becomes less Star Trek and more like an alien movie. There's actually a scene where the crew has their phasers drawn and prepared to defend themselves against a potential attack. And rather than fire phasers confidently like I'm used to seeing Starfleet officers do, basically Michael says, run, and they haul ass. And I'm like, that's not too Starfleet, but the gore factor is raised up a notch. I would say that's thanks to this post-Walking Dead TV landscape that we're in now. There's some pretty gory effects that we see on this lifeless ship, this Federation ship. So overall, I'd say this episode picks right up where the last two episodes left in terms of the quality, the production quality, the cinematic quality. It just looks great. It took me a little bit of time to rationalize that, they're just giving me a much more realistic Trek. I was led to believe that that whole middle section was just thrown in for some thrills. But then there's a reveal at the end, as I said before, that lets us know that, wow, this really is a Trek that's going to be serialized. They're not going to be standalone stories, and all the characters are not what they seem. And it's clear we better not get used to any characters possibly surviving into the next season, because some of the characters that we met last night, it's clear they're on some other stuff and they may not be long for the Federation. I'm looking forward to the next episode. I hope you are too.